John Fisher in 1877 described an ancient Irish ideal of land ownership, which he called tanistry, whereby no one owned land but were assigned land when alive, which reverted to the overall tribe when you died. Therefore, all the work you did on the land was for the greater benefit, not just for the personal one. We need that attitude now, as we all face the problem of climate change. What we do together has an impact collectively. And maintaining the countryside in such a way that maximises carbon capture is a good place to start. And where would we do that, you may ask? In the much ignored and very valuable Irish hedge.
Well, hedges are very important, but I think it's reasonable to say that they're often overlooked, certainly. And I think here in Ireland, more recently, we've had research that started to look at, in the first instance, saying, well, how much have we got, right? Now, the other side of that coin is how can we measure them? There's never been direct measurements. And so within this project I'm working on now, we're developing a methodology that would allow you to make those calculations that are related to real measurements. And hopefully we can capture a wide enough range in terms of management intensities that you can then, if you like, interpolate what any hedgerow might represent.
In order to have a net carbon sink potential, hedges need to be a vibrant, living and growing environment. And they need management to do this, something that has been known about for many years. Farmer James Ham believes that managing his hedges on his farm in Westmeath is an important and essential annual job, as important as any other job of maintenance.
No, there was originally a big ash tree growing in there, and the ash tree fell a number of years back, and I'm only getting back to fixing this hedge now, but I've already had to put in some infill there with the tractor and the loader to fill up the hole that the tree left behind, and then I've laid a couple of bushes into it already, and there's one left here which I'm going to try and get down.
If it is desirable to make hedges impenetrable to pigs and other stocks, the plants are plashed while they are young. Plashing consists in bending the main shoots over diagonally and wiring them into position so that they will grow there. Each plant thus bends down over the following one.
The traditional way of maintaining hedges long ago was by hedge laying, or taking the stem, partially cutting it and laying it over to form at a 15 or 20% angle usually to form a barrier, and by doing that it thickened up the hedge, partly because of the laid stems which maintained the barrier in the coming year after it was initially cut, but also because you used the ability of the plant to produce new shoots. And from this laid stem here you can see where several stems grew up from the cut. So where it was cut and laid over, and this was cut off as a stump, then new shoots came up and formed these new stems here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 off that one. And that obviously improves the structure of the hedge, but it also keeps it young, because if we were to leave that hedge growing indefinitely without touching it, obviously it ages and then eventually it becomes senescent and it'll die out. The value of the nature within our own hedges, the value of the shelter within our hedges is not appreciated in any shape or form. We've been told, yeah, you can build something or you can buy something that does the same job. Well, you can't buy anything that replaces the biodiversity. You can't buy anything that will replace the nature that's there. And if we want to try and dig into the science of it, the science will tell us that if there's a natural balance in the hedgerow, you have shelter there for species such as insects that may be predatory on pests that are in your crops. They'll have some impact. They may not cure the entire problem, but they still have some impact. If I was to bring it back to a more selfish basis, on a day-to-day basis in the summertime of the year, and I don't have the figure to hand, but I did read an article where someone quantified the amount of flies and midges that a bat consumes in its nighttime foraging up and down a hedgerow system. And they put a weight on it as much as numbers. If a bat foraging can take that number of insects out of the system, if they were not there to do it, wouldn't I be a lot more uncomfortable with the amount of flies buzzing around my head and so on and so forth. So these things are all interrelated, and they still come back to relate to us. So the value does not have to be monetary directly. It's the complementary effect of the system that impacts on us as we go about our daily lives. It improves your patience a bit, and you need to have it. It's done a bit better than I expected because of the nature of the age and the size of the stump, but it'd be well worth allowing it to have a chance, because there is a good connection there left over in that piece of hinge, which is going to feed sap and growth back up into that. You will see new sprouts will actually begin to form along the length of that there and grow straight up in the next year or so, forming a more bushy stem. Another form of woodland management or hedge management where you deliberately go in and cut everything at the ground to look for the regeneration is called coppice. We look back to the old skills that were there before, and hedge laying and coppicing were the skills that were used pre-machinery.
I cannot help thinking that it is an awful pity that there are not many more types of farmcraft competitions to keep alive the art of doing things right. Competitions tend to keep alive the know-how of these various jobs. One such thing I have in mind is the question of hedge laying. In some parts of the country, this is an art that has, for some considerable time, been extinct.
The Hedge Laying Association of Ireland are keeping the competitions of hedge laying, and therefore the skills involved, alive and well in this competition held near Moat in 2021.
Everything that used to live in our woods, because our woods have gone, pretty much everything is finding refuge in our hedgerows. We are very fortunate in this country that we have more of our field boundaries and hedgerows left than in many parts of Europe. But they do need to be maintained, they do need to be looked after.
That's actually, if you think about from the carbon perspective, where you're not actually really taking out, you're simply cutting back and allowing it to regrow. That's a really, really excellent mechanism for keeping carbon in the hedgerow and for allowing more of it. So, but I would say that, you know, I work quite a lot with farming groups and so forth. I've met some people, of course, with those skills, but do I think they're mainstream? No. Are there ways we can improve or promote ideas of best management practices? Yes. The above ground biomass, I think it's fair that there are probably, it's very, very, very variable associated with management. And so of course, if you cut back hedgerows to the same height and with every year, then you're not really going to be accumulating biomass, because all of this hinges on the notion of photosynthesis and growing more biomass. Then you're maybe not getting as much as you could get. There's certainly a need to think about how to manage them, because I think people will start to understand their importance more and more given the context of the targets that we now need to meet.
Although sheep are well protected by wool, and in this climate are constitutionally able to withstand cold weather, shelter is necessary in order to protect them against driving winds and rain, snow and frost. And to this end, it is well if a tall, strong hedge is always in the hands of the farmer who can grow it almost at will.
Now, apart from a small bit of tidying there, the one important thing that needs to be done with that is to secure it a little bit better, to stop it from blowing around in the wind or help prevent it moving if livestock got their head to it or something like that. So I'll use a couple of crook sticks now to do that. I have some hazel cut already for the job. I have a mallet that I made myself out of a piece of vellum and an ash handle, which we can use for driving this down. Now we'll go in somewhere like that. That clay is a bit too loose, but anyway. And that would be generally what I do to secure a bush. Well, at least, you know, while the clay is loose, that's going to help keep that from moving around. I'll be happy enough with that there. It's not going to wiggle around too much, and there's a nice little bit of a slope up because the sap needs to go up rather than down.
I think perhaps reasonably emphasis for a long time in agriculture has been focused on the production aspects, and sometimes some of the benefits that were traditionally extolled on aspects like hedgerows perhaps have been lost somewhat over time, and there will, I expect, be more urgency to promote managements that will better guarantee or better support the delivery of ecosystems in a more sustainable way.
So if hedges are going to be seen as adding to our ability to take carbon from the atmosphere, then management of them seems to be a vital part of battling climate change in the countryside. Thinking more cooperatively and maybe taking the odd lesson from history might also be necessary if we want to leave a viable future world for our children.
If you buy a farm, I presume you would expect to feel a lot more ownership because you've expended money on it. But in my case, I was lucky to inherit a farm. And I do know at times when I was fighting the banks that I was always thinking, this is my farm and I own it. But hand in hand with that, for a long number of years now, I've also felt that it's important for anyone who's lucky enough to have that land to conserve it and conserve the nature on it, and maybe leave it a little bit more suitable for biodiversity and nature for the years to come. And if that makes me a conservator, well then I am. So.